What is the very first thing, what is the first priority for you if elected Prime Minister of Canada?
I think we have to focus on unifying this country because I'm very, very concerned, especially being here in Alberta. We hear that there are many people who just feel that this province has been disrespected and that they want to leave this great confederation, and I'm very concerned about that. So I would look at policies that will strengthen this country. I think developing our natural resources, building pipelines, getting our oil to Tidewater, and selling our LNG across the world to help with the environment and bringing those revenues back at home, building our country, and rebuilding our economy out of COVID.
And do you think Leslyn Lewis, Dr. Leslyn Lewis, I should say, is the person who's best equipped to address that concern?
Well, I do like Pierre Poilievre, but she did address that he won't touch the social issues.
I kind of quite like the Mr. Pierre. I found he has a strong opinion, but at the same time, I didn't see him on the street with the truckers. That part is kind of disappointing.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News, and we are on location at C3 Calgary West, a church here in Calgary, Alberta, for the first of two stops in Calgary for leadership hopeful for the Conservative Party of Canada, Dr. Leslyn Lewis. She is considered by many a more socially conservative option than some of the alternative leadership candidates, espousing strong pro-life views and being a critical opponent of the carbon tax historically. We're going to be speaking with her tonight, speaking with some people and seeing why they support her, and covering her next couple events as well. We're hoping to get an exclusive interview with her very shortly, and we'll bring that to you as well. We're going to be covering this campaign and all of the other leadership hopefuls as they come through Western Canada and through Southern Alberta at leadershipreports.ca.
And all they wanted to do was have a voice, and we could not even give them that. Instead, what did we do? We utilized the Emergencies Act. The Emergencies Act. People's property were confiscated. Assets were frozen. Bank accounts were frozen. Irrespective of what you believe, we have a system of due process for when we confiscate people's properties in this country, and it was not adhered to. And that instills a lack of confidence in our democracy and in our system. And I'm running to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Well, Dr. Leslyn Lewis addressed a crowd of a few hundred people here this evening, and she hit on many key markers for many Conservative Albertan voters. She talked about defunding the CBC. She talked about axing the carbon tax. She talked about the alienation of Alberta and the need for pipelines, even for her as an environmentalist, knowing that pipelines and Alberta ethical oil are in fact the best for the environment. The reception was generally very positive. She even overtly came out and spoke in support of the truckers and talked about how the media lied about them, and spoke about the arrests of pastors that have taken place, criticizing the party for their lack of response on civil liberties issues. She was very well received. What are some of the main concerns that you have with the Conservative Party of Canada presently, and who do you think is best equipped to deal with them?
Oh, I don't know who is the best. Yeah, I kind of quite like the Mr. Pierre. I found he has a strong opinion, but at the same time, I didn't see him on the street with the truckers. That part is kind of disappointing.
Yeah. So you like that Dr. Leslyn Lewis, in fact, went onto the street, talked to the truckers, supported them, when other people who are...
That's right. So people would feel like you guys are standing with us, right? We're not alone. You're not just speaking, easily at the parliament, right?
Yeah.
That's had nothing to do with our life, right? I don't really like that part. Yeah.
So you want a politician who takes action?
Yes. Yeah, like European politicians, right? They really show with their action. That part really encouraging. I hope our opposition party would do that same thing.
I want to be able to worship God the way I chose to worship God in a beautiful Canada that I love, without being afraid that someone is going to arrest me like they've been arresting pastors and all of that. No. And the Conservative Party leaders should stand up and defend the freedom of the people of Canada. They should defend us, whether you're Muslim, whatever. They should stand up and defend us. They should.
And so tell us about this troubling package, though, that you got from the government. Tell it, what is this?
It's a sheer waste of money. Honestly speaking, it's a waste of money. But at the same time, I don't know whether this, like in the last 2 years, Canadians have been living in fear. There's been so much segregation, there's so much discrimination, vaccinated and unvaccinated, wearing mask and not wearing mask, all those discriminations. You know, I'm a black woman. I've been through so much stereotyping, discrimination, racial, call it anything. We can't be in denial, it's true. And so when I see this wearing of mask, vaccination, all those things, it's part of discrimination and it shouldn't happen. Then all of a sudden, I get this letter 2 weeks ago. Oh, the government of Canada wants me to participate in some COVID testing. How? And then I'm asking everyone, and then today they send the package. And I'm asking everyone that lives on my street, oh, my family happens to be the only black family that lives on the streets. So is the government picking on my family? I want to know, and I need an answer.
I'm here with the MLA for beautiful Banff Kananaskis, Miranda Rosen. I just wanted to get your opinion. You yourself were just involved in a pretty intense race for your constituency, and now we have some Conservative leadership races underway. Lots of people making their way to Calgary, some in your area here. What do you make of the experience tonight? Have you been talking to people? What's the vibe like? And how do you think Dr. Leslyn Lewis did answering people's questions?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I'm hearing as a provincial politician, obviously not at the federal level, is that people, especially in Alberta, especially in Banff Kananaskis, are ready for change at the federal level. They are sick of the tyranny that we've seen from the federal government. They are unhappy with the way the Emergencies Act was invoked and so many other poor decisions, namely, especially even the travel mandates, which are destroying our tourism industry and have been for some time. So the number one thing I'm hearing is that people want change. They are sick of this Liberal government. But I think the Banff Kananaskis residents are largely undecided who that change will be for them when it comes to their federal leaders. So I'm just going to events to support all of the leaders who are running, or the potential leaders, to hear what they have to say, what they have to offer, and so that when other constituents talk to me, I can let them know that I've been around the block, I've listened to everyone, and I can encourage all of them to do the same. I'll be buying myself. I believe I actually got an email just last night that my federal membership had expired, so I'll be renewing tonight, and I would encourage the rest of the Banff Kananaskis members to do the same, so they can have a voice in this process.
And finally, before we let you go, I know lots of people waiting to talk to you. Dr. Leslyn Lewis talked about axing the carbon tax. She talked about cutting funding for the CBC. She talked about acknowledging that Alberta has felt isolated, talked about building pipelines and supporting natural resources. Do you feel that the sentiments she shared tonight will resonate with people in your constituency?
Yes, absolutely. When we ran for government last time, we had a pretty strong platform on scrapping the carbon tax, and that was our very first bill in government, very first thing we did, and we fought that all the way to the Supreme Court. That's because we knew that's exactly what Albertans wanted us to do, and inevitably we were unsuccessful in that as a provincial government. But Albertans' demands for that carbon tax to be eliminated are still there. It's still the same. Albertans want the tax to be eliminated. They want market access for their resources, not just oil and gas, but all of their other resources like hydrogen, petrochemicals as well. And as a provincial government, we can only fight so far, and we need an ally at the federal level to help us accomplish those goals on behalf of the province and all of Western Canada. So absolutely, I think every single constituent and person in Alberta knows that we need expanded market access for resources, and that we shouldn't have federal policies that detrimentally impact one industry over the others, especially not industries that serve as such primary economic drivers for the entire nation. And I am confident that whoever the leader the Conservative Party of Canada elects to be their next leader will be a fierce advocate for those things.
Is there a main issue within the Conservative Party right now that you're concerned about and you feel she might be able to address?
Just about the lifting in my case, the vaccine mandates. It's completely, we're all gathered together here. Like she's mentioned, we don't know, some guy right beside you could be vaccinated or not, but I can't fly. Or, so that's completely unfair. And it's just, there's a bigger picture going on than just health with the Canadian government right now under the Liberals. So.
And do you think Dr. Leslyn Lewis, I should say, is the person who's best equipped to address that concern?
Well, I do like Pierre Poilievre, but she did address that he won't touch the social issues, which I kind of a light went on, like, will that go over in Canada? But it was a valid point, so I like them both, but I think she'll address the social issues a little more. the way it sounds. Yeah.
So I'm now joined by Alyssa Globe of Right Now, a pro-life organization. She's one of the many social conservative types or pro-life types who have attached their wagon to the Leslyn Lewis, Dr. Leslyn Lewis campaign. Why do you feel that she's the best voice or the best representative for people who have to some extent felt marginalized by the Conservative Party over the last couple of years?
Well, I think she has a fresh new perspective. She has a different message to bring to Conservative voters. She's not just a one-trick pony solely talking about the economy. She talks about, she has experience with environmental policy, she has social policies, she has very good economic policies that are very similar to all the other candidates. And I think that she can really unite the party, because the party isn't one specific type of person. It's such a huge movement. It's such a big blue tent, as we always like to say. And so you really need someone who does cover all those bases. And the only person that I see doing that in this Conservative leadership race is Dr. Lewis.
The two candidates that we're hearing, everyone we've talked to tonight effectively, are Dr. Leslyn Lewis and Pierre Poilievre. Dr. Leslyn Lewis addressed that to some extent. She said Pierre Poilievre exceptional on fiscal policy, very much in line with her, but that he is unwilling to address and delve into these socially conservative issues. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Absolutely, and I think that's definitely a detractor. He doesn't have the social policies or really any other policies other than economic ones. And even when people do have asked him in the past about other policies, like invoking the Emergencies Act, he said that Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act to detract from inflation. So everything comes back to economy, everything comes back to debt and inflation. And I think that's obviously very important, but there are other issues to be considered, and we need a candidate that does cross all those different policy points and not just one specific one. Plus, Dr. Leslyn Lewis has way more life experience, especially in the private sector, in business. She has her PhD. Pierre was elected when he was in his early 20s. He's a career politician, doesn't have much real life experience. And so I think that really is also a big differentiator and really matters in this race.
So I'm now joined by Dr. Leslyn Lewis, who's had a pretty successful event tonight. I want to just have the opportunity to ask you a couple questions on some key issues. You did address some of them throughout the evening, but first and foremost, I wanted to ask you, the Conservative Party of Canada has a bit of a legacy of trying not to lose instead of running to win. What kind of campaign would you run if you were elected or made the leader of the party in an effort to dethrone Justin Trudeau?
Well, I'm not going to tell you all my secrets, but what I think that we need to do is we really need to get with the grassroots. We need to reach into communities, especially communities where people have conservative values, but they haven't traditionally voted conservatives. And so focusing on large city areas where you have high immigrant populations and they have those conservative values, I think that demonstrating that they are reflected in our party is something that will go towards making sure that they feel comfortable in voting for the person of their choice irrespective of their party.
Now, big tent party is a term that we often hear around Conservatives. It's very often a code word for basically we're not going to talk about socially conservative issues, and that's what makes us big tent. Very many people look to you as a more socially conservative, or at least open to socially conservative ideas. Do you think that there is a home for socially conservative people in the Conservative Party of Canada?
Well, I actually interpret the big tent as totally different because we're not a groupthink party. We allow freedom of thought and diversity of ideologies. And that's how I see a big tent party. And in that definition, everybody's included. Every voice is respected, and everybody's ideologies and social leanings and fiscal leanings, those are respected within our party.
One of the really big sort of tragedies in Canada is the situation on many First Nations and Indigenous reserves where they do not have clean drinking water. We've seen virtue signaling and posturing about solving that under Justin Trudeau, but there's been very little improvement. As Prime Minister, what would you do to end that crisis?
Well, we always care about clean drinking water when it comes to the developing world. I think that we should be able to do that for our own first. I also support helping other countries, but I do believe that charity begins at home. And so I think we should just stop the virtue signaling, find solutions to deal with this, and make sure that we show goodwill, because I think that many of the issues that we have and the need for reconciliation is because we haven't been keeping our promises, and we need to keep this promise.
Would you have any concrete plans or a timeline in which you'd say we're going to get this addressed, or this is how we're going to get this addressed?
Well, I think that what we need to do is we need to bring Indigenous leaders to the table, and we need to find real solutions. And instead of having a top-down, this is the solution, bring the leaders to the table and find real ways of getting this done. And I think that once we do that, we'll be able to achieve it.
And in the interest of time, if you don't mind, we'll do some yes/no questions. Would you axe the carbon tax?
Yes.
Would you defund the CBC?
Yes.
Would you, what's another one? Actually, here's a better question. What is the very first thing, what is the first priority for you if elected Prime Minister of Canada?
I think we have to focus on unifying this country because I'm very, very concerned, especially being here in Alberta. We hear that there are many people who just feel that this province has been disrespected and that they want to leave this great confederation, and I'm very concerned about that. So I would look at policies that will strengthen this country. I think developing our natural resources, building pipelines, getting our oil to Tidewater, and selling our LNG across the world to help with the environment and bringing those revenues back at home, building our country, and rebuilding our economy out of COVID.
Rebel News is out there covering the other side of the story, and we are doing so on the leadership race for the Conservative Party of Canada. To ensure you don't miss a single report, you can stay tuned at leadershipreports.ca.